everybody, welcome to yet another video. So today we're going to be looking at the Walcom Ego 190, and I've pitted that against the DV1s. This video's probably about a year and a half old, something like that, and it was a little bit after I'd got the DV1s for the first time. Well, I suppose you only get it for the first time, don't you? I recently got the DV1s, that's a better way of saying it. And at the time, and the same applies now, these things were about the same price, and they are also right at the top of the scale of price of miniguns in the UK, certainly anyway, and I think that's probably mirrored most places as well. Certainly with the case of the DV1s, it's a very expensive minigun. And what I was thinking was, obviously you would pit one against the other because they had the same size of gun, minigun, and the same sort of price. So what actually separates these two? Now, people that have watched my videos, and I've done a top 12 minigun video, and I'll put a link in the description, will know that I rate the DV1s really highly, and I don't rate the Ego 190 as highly at all. It's actually quite an accomplished minigun, but it's not in the same league, I don't think, as the DV1s. In the UK, it actually won an award for Best Innovative Product, and that was in 2022, I think. And you can understand that because it's super light. I actually weighed these two. The Ego, it says 190, but it's actually 197 grams. And the Devilbiss, which is 6.7 ounces for you guys that are still using Imperial. And the DV1s was 340 grams, which is 12 ounces. So the DV1s, although not heavy, actually weighs twice the amount of the Ego. There's two ways of looking at that. One is it's a heavy old lump for what it is. The other one is it's actually quite a well-engineered tool that feels good in the hand. And I would prefer to think of it as the latter, really, a good engineered tool that feels good in the hand. But I mean, it doesn't really matter within reason what any of these feel like. At the end of the day, it's what they actually work like. And I think that the DV1s is way above the Ego 190. Now, I didn't do these tanks the same colour. The colour was already done, and I just clear coated them. But hopefully you will see that the clear coat application on the, and I was trying for as flat a finish as I could get. When you see at the end, you'll notice that the clear coat application with the DV1s is definitely a flatter finish. And I was trying my best with both of them, if that makes sense. But the DV1s just atomizes, in my opinion, much finer than the Ego. The Ego's got a lot going for it. As I say, it's very light, so if you want a nice light gun, then that's great. It actually comes with two pots, so if you actually use the pots that come with it, you've got quite a small pot. I can't remember what it is, about 150 millilitres, and you get a bigger pot as well, about 250 millilitres. Take that with a pinch of salt, because I haven't actually looked it up. I'm just going from memory, but you do get two size pots with it, whereas the DV1 you only get one, which is 125 millilitres, same pot as the SRI Pro Light or Pro Light S as it is now. So you get more in the way of bits with it. You also get a service kit with it, which is actually, I think, it's quite a nice touch. With most of the Italian guns seem to give you a service kit of some kind, which is quite a nice touch. And I don't think, as some people have said, oh, if you get a service kit with it, it means that it must be unreliable. I don't think that's the case. I think they just, giving you something extra that you don't get with most other manufacturers. But with the DV1s, you do get two tips. And I originally thought that what you got with the Ego was probably more worth than having two tips. But having used both and worked with both, I think you're probably better off having two tips. So I'm now thinking that the DV1s is definitely better value for money, and as I'm already saying, or hope I'm saying, is the better gun. So the DV1s also has a good side trait, or I think it's a good side trait anyway. It actually runs at about 1.7 bar very happily for clear coat. I need to bump the Ego up to about 2.1 bar for clear coat, and the result of that is you definitely get less overspray with a DV1s. As far as air consumption goes, they're probably about the same. The Ego may use slightly more, but they're about the same, and they're definitely more than like the Pro Lite S, SRI Pro Lite is, which is what I would regard the DV1s being sort of like the next stage on, if that makes sense. So I think you will agree when you see the end results at the end. If you're bored already and you skip to the end, you'll be seeing it now. But I think you'll find that the DV1s definitely gives a flatter finish. So if the flatter finish is what you're after, then you know that's definitely the one to go for. The plus side of the Ego as a general all-round gun for a lot of people, as I say, it's got the lightness, it's definitely faster than the DV1s, puts out more material for the same tip size. These are both been tested in 1.2 tip size. It's the HTE version for the Ego, and it's the S1 version for the DV1s. But it definitely puts out more material, so it's a faster gun. Whether you actually need the super flat finish that the DV1s is capable of is often a contention, because most of the time you don't. If you're doing smart repairs and things like that, you just need it to match whatever's there, and a lot of people will be doing smart repairs with these. But if you don't mind taking your time with a gun and just want ultimate performance, considering these things are the same price, the DV1s is a much better gun. It was quite chilly when I did this. It was only about 10 degrees Celsius. I was using a U-pole clear coat, which I did heat up. I heat it up to about 30 degrees Celsius. Makes it run out much more, but it still doesn't run out as well as some of the better clear coats does. So the clear coat's not doing either gun a favour, but I have tried multiple clear coats with the Ego 190, and I still can't get what I would call a super flat finish with it. I might be able to if I put the pressure up to something like 2.5, 3 bar or something like that, but for me you start to lose the whole ethos of a minigun then, because then you're putting out clouds and clouds of overspray, which the minis tend not to do as much as the full-size guns. And if you're going to start doing that, you might as well buy a full-size gun. I mean, you could buy a Kiwami 4, or you could buy 2 Kiwami 4s for the price of the Ego 190. So I just don't think it's worth the money. But it's not a bad gun by any means. As I say, it's as an all-rounder, then you know it may well be exactly what you need. I know someone I know sprays cycle frames, and he's got a 1.0 HTE version, and he absolutely loves it. He says I can do whatever I want with it, and it's really light, and it's just lovely. Now I would say if you want something that's really small and really light, which is both of these guns are fairly small, though the DV1s is bigger, then save some money and buy an LPH 80, because I think the LPH 80 atomizes certainly nearly as well as the DV1s, but with a smaller fan, smaller body, and that weighs about 197 grams as well. So you know there's nothing in it. Anyway, here's the two tanks. The tank on the left is with the DV1s, and this is the Ego. Both of them are a good finish. The finish is completely off the gun, so there's no polishing or anything. And it was the next day. I left it one day. These days I try to leave it 2 days, just so that any gloss can die back. But I think you'll agree that they both perform really well. But if you're in the same camp as me, you'll be thinking to yourself, looking at this, that the DV1s definitely gives a flatter finish, if that's what you want, which, you know, seems to be what most people ask me for. Anyway, guys, thanks as always for watching the videos. Cheers. Bye-bye.